Hey there, fellas. The weather outside is awesome, and in the sunlight we had a good look at this here automobile. You might remember how we took this car out to a testing ground where we tried, among other things. So we poured some gas in a... How do I put this? Oh yeah, we made a trail, which we lit on fire and were able to beat on foot, which is to say that the trail wasn't quick to ignite. We didn't see any explosions, but the car did get torched. But that was the idea from the very beginning. You see, here's the thing. A while back, some of you, after seeing that, witnessing what tends to be left behind after some of these experiments that we conduct, requested that we try firing up the engine. But like after... I mean on a car after it was burned completely to the ground. Anyway, as you can see, this one was completely destroyed by fire. Absolutely nothing survived. At a quick glance, it appears that only the engine block is still intact. Well, relatively intact anyway. I mean, the distributor is gone, the carburetor is melted, same with the fuel pump. So in other words, every piece that was made from a, let's just say a lightweight alloy, which includes, I don't know, zinc, aluminum, well, everything perished. As far as I can tell, the intake manifold is okay, this here tube, the water pump, and the front end in general. Over here, it's all a matter of perspective, if I'm being honest. Look at this. I can't even make out what this is. What is it, a relay or something? I can see a board, some fiberglass, and something that looks like a microchip or God knows what it actually is. Anyway, here's what we need to do. It's all quite simple. We need to try... Then again, we were never about trying, were we? We need to fire up this motor. How exactly do we get there? Well, we're about to show you. Right, let's fire this thing up. Reviving a car after it burned down. Part 1. Translation and voiceover by BMI Russian. Right, fellas, here's what we're looking at. We removed the engine and temporarily hung it on a crane. We took it apart, and so here's the situation. Here's where I suggest we begin with this. I say we start our assessments with the accessories. You've already seen the carburetor, and it is just... gonzo. What can we do with this here distributor? Not much, I reckon. Place it next to the carby. Now I suggest we move on to the more interesting items. The alternator is seized. Oh wow, the plugs just fall right out. What else have we got? The cover for the water pump. Well, the gasket is okay. And I can't say that it's horribly melted. Screw this cover. As for the pump itself, it's not budging even a tiny bit. Right. Moving along. This here is the rear main seal. It appears to be okay at first glance, but it is far from being malleable. It's hard as a rock, but no fire damage. It's probably down to the fact that it was protected by the gearbox. Well, the bell housing. Right, what else? Here we have a seal from underneath the fuel pump, which is totally screwed. It's probably just gonna break if I drop it. Oh wow. The pushrod is moving, really? Yeah, it actually moves upon impact, check that out. Still buggered though. It's made from some kind of plastic which started falling apart due to it overheating. And that's the end of that story. Right, what else? The front main seal. It looks to be in perfectly okay condition. It's nice and soft, with no signs of fire damage. At one point the oil did start to spill out of the engine, but not all of it was burned. It's nice and soft. Do we really even need to replace it? I reckon we should, for good measure, since we might see it leaking oil through here upon startup. Okay, moving further. The pulleys, the flywheel, all of that is made from metal. However, there is one small caveat. The clutch pressure plate and the clutch disc. The disc, for reasons unknown, simply stuck itself to the pressure plate so tenaciously that we weren't able to... You just can't pry it off using your bare hands. I suggest we try something different. We take a hammer, give it a hit, and now they're separated. What have we got here? What can I say? It was exposed to a ton of heat, but it appears to be okay. The friction material wasn't cooked. It does smell a bit, but no worries. It should work even if it is slightly charred. As for the pressure plate, this might be a tad more complicated, in the sense that... Then again, come to think of it, I actually don't think the metal is compromised, that there's something seriously wrong with it. You can tell where the disc got stuck. They got joined together because of all of that heat. There's a bit of material left on there. We might be able to use it, though replacing it is preferable. The oil filter... Well, yeah. The walls on this one are pretty thin. God knows what happened to the paper filler. But this rubber seal we have right here, instead of working as a seal, it became a... It's not really even a rubber seal anymore. I don't even know what to call this. It looks to be horribly crushed. I mean, you do compress the rubber when you so much as screw the filter on with your hand, but here the extreme temperature turned it into a pancake. This is the first time I've seen one this flat. I'm sure it's all down to the temperature. Okay, so we've gone through the ancillary stuff. What about the engine itself? The internals don't seem to be... Well, it's not that nothing happened to them at all, but at a quick glance, there's nothing horrendous to report. It's pretty obvious that the engine itself is all black, but it was on fire, so what else do you expect? What's interesting is that if you take a wrench and try to turn it over, take a look at this. The engine, it just rotates without you having to put in too much effort. It goes around, and I'm pretty happy with that. Well, you do have to put some muscle into it, but it rotates, and that's good. Very reassuring. Right, anything else? Before we fire it up, it's unclear what sort of condition the valve seals are in. We are going to keep pulling the engine apart, and we will look into whether or not they survived the fire. In any case, the gear that gets the oil pump to spin, together with the distributor, something seems to be very wrong with it. It might have been made from plastic, which melted. I mean, not melted. Then again, yeah, it melted. It didn't really burn, or maybe it did. Probably not, due to a lack of oxygen. I mean, the distributor was in place. It should have blocked off any air from coming in, so there you go. There was a ton of smoke from the burning oil, meaning it must have simply melted. Anyway, that's about it for now. For some strange reason, when we removed the oil pan, this end bearing fell out. And so now, the crankshaft, we're looking at an axial. You guys see that? There's some serious movement happening. It's easier to catch if you look from the side. Now, because we're missing that piece, the crank has a lot of play in it. So far, I'd say that's probably the most unpleasant issue out of everything we've uncovered so far. This engine was full of oil, and I'm guessing that saved the day and kept this area from overheating. Now, which direction does heat usually tend to move? That's right. As we all know, it tries to find its way up. It's always cooler downstairs than it is up top, since heat does try to make its way upwards. That is when you've got a fire burning. Maybe there's the reason. I don't really have a coherent answer. Okay, let's keep pulling it apart while examining the internals, and then we piece it back together and fire it up. Here's the situation, fellas. We've detached one of the valves. As for the seals, you're not going to believe this, but they are very much in working condition. Despite them having endured such high temperature, absolutely nothing is wrong with them. However, this here timing chain guide, together with the tensioner, they appear to be a tad brittle. Even when you bend them slightly, they begin to make a crackling noise. These we'll definitely need to replace. Then there's the matter of... So yeah, admittedly I did, well, to put it bluntly, I gone screwed up. Of course this tiny gear couldn't have been made from plastic. It's just that when I had a peek through that small orifice, it did look as if it melted. But here's what really happened. You see the oil seal that was sitting on the distributor? This is where it's supposed to be. I'm talking about a cone-shaped seal that keeps the oil at bay. Keeps it from winding up in places it doesn't need to be. Well, it doesn't allow too much of it to come through and cover the contact area. Anyway, so that's what melted. It dripped onto... Oh, there it goes. So in essence, this here used to be the oil seal for the Dizzy. It's a gunner, but who cares? As for the piece itself, it looks good. None of the splines are missing. I reckon we can just throw it back in. We'll keep the head in place, since I really don't see the point of removing it. I mean, these Lada motors never cease to amaze. So neither the chain nor the cam. What matters is that the engine rotates, though we did get us those end bearings to keep the crank in check, but that's it. Otherwise, everything is reusable, though we will have to replace the main seals, and that's it. Everything that perished in the fire we'll replace with something new. I take it this will be another case of us being truly amazed by a Lada motor. I don't doubt that for even a second. Alright, I say we put this thing back together and fire it up. Let's do this. Right, fellas, we're looking good here. We've attached everything. The alternator, water pump, distributor, coil, carburetor, the fuel pump and all of that jazz. starter motor. They aren't necessarily new, but these are all working parts. So yeah, we've stuck on the gearbox. It's not the box from this very car, that one is still inside. We fitted this transmission for a bit more convenience when installing the starter motor, which is to say that it's meant to be sitting on the box. And we're about to try firing it up. What we need to do now is, well, start the engine and get it to run. That's about all the tasks we've laid out. We are getting there. I keep getting everything confused on these Solexes, or what is this? Oh, right, there they are. Let her rip. The damn thing won't run without using the choke. The ignition is also a bit suspect. That's all good. Go ahead and rotate it the other way. We just need some slight adjustment. Don't tighten it too hard. See that? When the valve is shut, it does something, but it stalls as soon as you give it some gas. Try again. Maybe it's just the carby. After 10 more attempts, it appears to... Come on now. We've got backfire all around the engine. So as soon as you started adjusting the ignition, let's try that again. It is not happy. How many cylinders is that? Just 2. Did you replace the plugs? I'm sure you did. Hang on, you know what? The firing order. 1, 3, 4, 2. Yeah, looks about right. It's at full throttle, let's do this. That's enough. What's up? 6. 6 kilos? That's not a lot. That'll do. We've got 7. 7 in this one? 7.5 even. That's enough. How much? This one's good, almost 8. We've got 7.5 here as well. So 6, 7.5, 7.5. Imagine if this one is like 12. It is more or less even, but on the low side. It's not enough. That's about 6.5 or something. Want to try some seafoam? Sure. Alright, since the motor was exposed to high temperature, we'll be pouring some of this stuff in. Some nice foam, which we'll now proceed to... I can already see the soot coming out. Now we'll let it sit for a while. Then we turn the engine over so it spits everything out. I reckon we try to start it up immediately after, since the oil will drip back into the sump. We'll need to spin it up to restore pressure, and we should be good to go. But now we just have to wait. I wouldn't worry about that. There was some blowout through the breather tube. It was blowing pretty hard. The compression... We could do another compression test. The good news is that... we have a bit of compression in all of the cylinders, meaning we have full valve articulation. They do sometimes get stuck, not wanting to close. But here we are looking at 6, 7, 8 kilos of pressure, meaning that's not a factor. They do work, and that's good. Now we do another compression test. I take it cylinder number 4 wasn't firing. 6, so it went up just a bit to 6.5. That's enough, dude. Great, we've got 8. Stop, man. 8 again. That'll do. That's a half kilo increase across the board. I guess that's good enough. The engine will live on, 107%. We saw some popping coming from here, and apparently this is where you attach the brake booster. Let's not forget that the engine is sucking in plenty of excess air through here. So somewhere in there... See how it fires up? Without the choke. Maybe just a bit. It's all good. Shut it off. That concludes our experiments with this motor. Despite it having been in a fire, it starts and runs. We will need to adjust the carby. We just threw on the first random one we found. At the very least, it works. These Lada engines never cease to amaze. We're dealing with some true Soviet machinery. Russian-made? It won't go down that easily. Right, fellas, that's all I have for you. Watch us, subscribe, send in your comments and suggestions, give us a big thumbs up. All right, catch you later. You decided to... Oh, just want to get it connected. We can give it a try, why not? There you go. Now things are really good. Why didn't we attach the vacuum hose right away? Then again, whatever. We got unstable engine operation because of a freaking tube, man. But these things happen. At least now everything is just perfect. It's a working carby. Yeah, it works, picks up revs, no more popping. Brilliant. Right, now it's on to restoring the shell. The suspension. Everything else, well... What we really should do is fix the brakes. For some reason, we're always lacking a working set of brakes. Screw the handbrake. But the primary brake system we are going to need. Stuff like the fuel tank isn't all that necessary.